Welcome to Breathe California TV. Our guest today is John Wunderling of Ferrari Ottoboni, an estate planning firm. There are an awful lot of reasons where you need to plan for your life. Do it now. So we're going to be talking to John about ways that you can take charge of your life, and obviously there are some things we're going to talk about that'll benefit both you and Breathe California. So see you in 30 seconds.
It's given me a chance to get out and be with people who has the same problem, and it helps you to manage your life better too, because you hear different things from each person, and it's just been really helpful in many ways.
Welcome back. I'm Terry Trumbull. I'm on the board of directors of Breathe California. We're your lung health people in California. Last year, our chapter here in the South Bay helped 140,000 people with breathing difficulties. But today we're talking with John Wunderling about something else that will help you and also helps Breathe California, which is taking charge of your own life, planning for the future of you and anybody in your life that you care about. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Terry.
So what did I just say have to do with anything?
Well, I think it's an important point that you bring up about the need really for everybody to plan their estates. Mm-hmm. Whether they have very little or whether they have a lot. I think it's important for everybody to do something. The downside to having no planning, and by that I mean you don't have a will, you don't have a trust or anything else, is that you're essentially leaving it up to the California law to say where your property, where your assets go when you pass away. So, and a lot of people don't realize where those things would pass if they didn't have it in writing. And so even for a husband and wife with children, typically a husband and wife want to leave things entirely to their surviving spouse and then to their kids. And that, if you don't have that in writing, it necessarily isn't going to happen that way under California probate law.
Yeah, it might be my brother who gets a portion.
Well, yeah, and if you have kids, it could be a portion goes out to the kids and a portion goes out to your surviving spouse, and that may not reflect what most people want. So it's important that you have something in writing about who you want to get your assets, your stuff.
And I assume there's a couple other players in here. Is if you plan how your assets get distributed, you can also reduce the, anybody that wants to be like that guy last week that said, I want my taxes higher, don't listen to this. But you guys will help with reducing the state and federal taxes, so your family has more when you leave.
Definitely, very much. There is a federal estate tax that's in effect. The way that law has been drafted is it's very actually flexible, and right now today there's a $5 million exemption, so if you pass away and you don't have assets exceeding $5 million, no estate tax. Yeah. But that actually is going to be reset January 1st, 2013 back down to $1 million.
So if you plan on living another year and a half, pay attention to what we're saying.
That's right. So while most taxpayers don't really need to do a lot of estate tax planning in their will or their trust, most everybody should still have at least a will, and a lot of people should have a trust. Most people in California that just own a residence, for example, should most likely have a trust. And the reasons so many people in California have trusts, and they're called revocable living trusts, different things, but they have it basically to avoid probate in California. And the reason so many people in California hate probates is because it takes a long time, it costs a lot of money, and it's not private. So the fees, the attorney's fees, are set by statute in the probate code, and they're based on the gross value of the assets. So for example, on a $1 million gross estate, just the attorney's fees are going to be about $23,000. which, you know, you figure here in California, $1 million gross estate, not netting out for mortgages or anything, might be a house and a couple of bank accounts.
So just to be really dumb, what is probate? That's a term that some people might not have heard of.
Sure. Probate basically is a court process where a judge oversees the valuation of the assets in your estate and oversees who should get those assets. So if you had a will, the judge would look at your will and make sure that the people designated got where they were supposed to receive in the will. If you didn't have a will, then they're going to enforce California law and says who gets what. But they'll still oversee the valuation of all the assets and make sure the attorney and the executor, the person in charge of planning your probate, is paid according to statute.
So mostly we've been talking about financial stuff, but there are also personal reasons why you might want to do a will, I would think.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a lot of personal reasons to do a will, and really it comes down to personal choices. What you really want to happen with your estate. If you have minor kids, it's absolutely critical.
Yeah. So if I had my wife died in a car accident and I have a 7-year-old daughter, if I die, I probably have some preferences about which of my relatives that I would want to take care. So that would go into a will?
It very much would. It would go in a will. It would designate who the guardians for your kids would be if you and your wife couldn't do it. And this, quite frankly, can be a real bone of contention between a husband and wife. And this is where a lot of times I see conflict between my clients. A lot of discussion, dispute about who the best person is going to be to do that. So it's important to put a lot of thought and discussion for a husband and wife into who that appropriate guardian is going to be. So that's very critical. Another critical planning point, and here we're really moving more towards a trust as opposed to a will, but it's a trust also protects you in the event that you become incapacitated. So you haven't passed away, but you're in a medical condition where you're unable to plan for yourself, pay your own bills, sign your tax return, do those types of things. By having a trust and having all your assets owned in that trust, the successor trustee, who would be, if it's a husband and wife, typically is the surviving spouse, could do all those things. Now, if you don't have a trust, because maybe you don't need one, you could still have a will, and you could have what's called a power of attorney. So a power of attorney basically is a separate document that just says, in the event I become incapacitated, I'm unable to make my own financial decisions, I appoint someone to do it for me. To sign my tax return if I can't, to pay my bills, to do all the things I can't do because I'm incapacitated. So that's another critical part of an estate plan document, would be a power of attorney. Another critical piece of sort of lifetime planning is what's called an advanced healthcare directive. This is a document that basically says I'm incapacitated, I can't make my own healthcare decisions, now I'd like to appoint somebody to do that for me.
Yeah.
And this is also the document that says what sort of care that you really want in the event that your doctor determines that you're in some sort of condition that you're not going to be able to recover from. And do you want to be allowed to pass away? Or do you want every measure taken to prolong your life, or no measures taken to prolong your life when you're in that condition? And this can also be a very touchy subject with a lot of clients. And one thing I always point out with that particular document, it's absolutely critical. If you recall the Terry Schiavo case in Florida many years back, she did not have any sort of writing, any healthcare directive or medical power of attorney, and her husband wanted to take her off the feeding tubes and allow her to pass. The parents did not. They battled it out in court. Husband won, removed the feeding tubes, and she, of course, passed away.
Yeah. But even the legal battles must have cost them thousands of dollars.
Oh.
It could have been used better for almost anything.
That's right. That's right. So by having it in writing, in a document, everybody knows what you want. And especially if you do want to be able to have those feeding tubes removed, food and water removed, it's absolutely critical that you specifically say that in the document.
Yeah, and in fact, I've done that.
Right.
With the average person doesn't know this about our healthcare system, but 50% of your health costs in your lifetime typically occur in your last year. And a lot of that will be, if you haven't signed this document, they're burning up the money that could go to your kids, keeping you alive, because the law says you've got to meet these requirements.
Right.
Or another one that came up when I first did a will was, when, assuming I'm the last parent alive and I've got a 7-year-old daughter, if I had $1 million of assets, when does she get it? When does she switch off? And it's amazing how many parents aren't willing to trust their kid at 18. They want the assets given to them at 25, 30, 35. I actually had a lawyer suggest you don't want to give them to them before 35. None of our people ever does. You don't trust their kids until 35.
Exactly, and that's the other downside of just having a will, is that if you have minor kids, you're going to have to create trust for those kids. Otherwise, they're going to have a guardianship that's going to have to be established in the probate court, and that's going to be in place until they're 18 years of age, and that's an additional cost and expense and probate procedure that's going to have to be carried out until they're 18 years of age. So another important reason a lot of people have trusts is to avoid the guardianship proceedings that would otherwise happen for minor kids. And I would agree with you that most people don't want an 18-year-old receiving a check for $1 million, because as we know, most 18-year-olds aren't going to spend that very wisely. And I would tend to agree. I call it sort of the minimum age of reason being 30, and so that'd be the earliest age that they receive anything. In the meantime, they'd have a trustee, somebody that that you trust to manage their assets for them until they reach that designated age. So that's critical as well. And then a good estate plan, whether it's a will or trust, would also take into account if you want everything to go to your kids. If one of those kids happens to be deceased before you, and they have kids, typically their share would go to their kids, your grandchildren, or in any other way that a client wants their assets to go. A lot of my clients have charitable intentions, for example, and so a lot of my clients say, well, you know what, of everything I have, I want to carve out 5 or 10% to give to this charitable organization. That means a lot to me. A lot of clients might say, well, I want my family to be the primary beneficiary, but in the unlikely event something happens to all my family members, my kids, my grandkids, there's nobody alive when I pass, then I'm going to designate a charitable beneficiary to receive those assets.
And off air, I've told you that's what we've done. If my wife, I, and 2 kids die in a plane crash, then Breathe California is going to luck out and get everything. So to me, there's some interesting analogies here, and I probably overuse analogies. But I chair the Preventative Health Committee of Breathe California. You save a lot in healthcare costs if you don't start smoking. If you are smarter to prevent the problem than to have it become a physical problem later. And what you're doing is really the same on financial and good values. You're working out a plan for the life of someone in case they were to die, rather than it just kind of throwing a bunch of cards and playing 52 pickup when you die.
That's right. It's very much the case. If you really take the time and put a good plan together ahead of time, you save your family a lot of headache going through the administrative processes in probate court. And frankly, you save a lot of money, because it's going to cost you a lot more to hire an attorney to go through a probate process than it would to set up a trust, for example. You're avoiding all those probate fees. So.
And just to wax overly serious, when my dad died, there were some ends that hadn't been tied up, and it was so close to his death it was really painful to be doing those. So anything that you can do to get ready really makes sense. So we're talking with John Wunderling. When we come back, we're going to talk about ways that you can help charities and also help yourself financially. There's a number of techniques that you can take something like a house, if you're lucky enough to own one, and turn it into income for yourself. See you in 30 seconds.
What it feels like to have an asthma attack is, well, you can't breathe and you can't tell anybody that you're having an asthma attack because you can hardly talk. You can maybe say 1 or 2 words, but you can't say much else. Breathe California has helped me come in contact with more asthmatics and more people who have the same case as I do. It's important to me because I don't feel like I'm alone in the fight against asthma. Welcome back to Breathe California TV. I'm Terry Trumbull. We're talking with John
Wunderling of Ferrari, Ottoboni. They're an estate planning firm. Even if you want to give your money to the American Cancer Society, give them a yell and go talk to them, because there's a lot of reasons that you help yourself and your family by talking to an estate planning attorney. So when we were talking about charitable ways, we see a lot of ads for donate your car. Breathe California used to do that. We don't anymore, but what's the benefit for somebody giving away their car?
Yeah, a benefit for somebody giving away their car, for example, is it's a good way to give a current benefit to a charity. You know, most times it's a car that might be easier for them to give away than it might otherwise be to sell. And the charity derives a legitimate benefit from receiving that car and then selling it off to somebody who's gonna want it and need it.
And you get
you get a charitable income tax deduction that's going to help lower your income tax
for fair market value of whatever the car was. So that's a good deal. My last 2 cars, I did that with Breathe California. Mm-hmm. It was easier than worrying about selling them, and they had a regular mechanism built in to do this. Well, we had Dick Lampour, who works with Breathe California, to encourage people to give away their homes and take back income, so they both get a charitable deduction and money. What's that all about?
Well, yeah, there's all kinds of ways that you can use your home, for example, to set up trusts, charitable trusts that you can get deductions for up front, and that will eventually pass to charities. There's all kinds of ways that you can benefit charities, and quite simply, Terry, the easiest way to do it is, even if you just have a will, is to just add the charity of your choice as a bequest to that charity when you pass away, whether it's 1% or 5%. That is the easiest way, and it is over 90% of all charitable bequests at death happen through somebody's will or trust. And so that really is the number one way that the charities receive things when somebody passes away, because it's easy to do. It's just a percentage, so they don't really have to think of a dollar amount, and because that changes, their net worth changes all the time. So rather than saying $100,000 or $5,000, come up with a percentage that they feel comfortable with, and just have that pass to the charity when they pass. And you know, for a lot of clients or potential new clients that call me and say, John, you know, I don't have a lot of money, but I want to do some simple planning. I don't need to do a trust. What are some easy ways that I can either give things to my family or charity without having to create all these fancy legal documents? And there are ways to do that. For some people, they may even have small, just term life insurance policies, for example. You have the power as the owner of that policy to change the beneficiary designation to anything that you want. It can be your spouse, it can be your kids, your spouse and your kids, it can be your spouse, your kids, and a charitable organization. Any percentages that you want. So you have complete flexibility to do whatever you want, and so long as you're alive, you can change that anytime you want to. So that's a tremendously easy and powerful tool for people to do some planning for themselves and their families. And that also avoids probate, because any life insurance proceeds typically avoid probate so long as you have a designated beneficiary. So that's an easy way. And frankly, on bank accounts or even brokerage accounts, you can create, and any of those accounts can become what we call pay on death accounts. So that when you pass away, you designate one or more beneficiaries to receive whatever assets are left in the account after you pass. Even if it's a modest account, that's fine. You can do it with any kind of bank account or brokerage account. That's an easy way to put kids or charities. Very simple way to go into the bank, ask for the beneficiary designation form, fill it out, and if you change your mind later, you can go change it anytime. Anytime.
Well, I like the percentage of your estate idea, because that isn't stealing money from your kids or others. You pay off all of your debts, whatever they may happen to be. But if you were to say, I'm going to give $1 million to Breathe California, which I'm sure they'd love, and your estate's only worth $1 million, everybody else gets nothing. The percentage is a way that you can pay off all of your debts at the time you die and then distribute things that way.
Exactly. And it's, you know, clients like it, you know, because it's an easy way to do it, and they don't have to worry about, oh, it's a dollar amount and what am I worth now, and is it taking away from my kids? So you're right, it is a simple way to do it. Another easy way for folks who have 401ks, IRAs, again, that's a beneficiary designation asset. So again, you have a complete flexibility with what to do with those assets. Now with IRAs and 401ks, if you have a spouse, you're going to have the spouse as a designated beneficiary. And if you wanted to do something else, the spouse would have to sign off and agree to do that. But I certainly have clients or instruct folks how to do that. It's really simple to do. But another easy way to do it without having to create a will or create a trust. So there are lots of ways to do it. And you know, there are charitable gift annuities that a lot of clients like to do, to give some assets, create a charitable gift annuity where they receive an income back for either a period of time or for the rest of their lives. And then whatever is left in that annuity when they pass goes to a charity.
So let's use a house as an example. Could I put my house into a charitable gift annuity and take back a certain amount of money each year?
You couldn't put it in a charitable gift annuity. No, typically that's not going to be allowable in any charitable.
So it's got to be an actual,
it has to be
financial
either
asset.
cash or, you know, stocks, bonds, those types of things could go into a charitable gift annuity. But you could do things, for example, using reverse mortgages, taking cash assets out and having remainders pass out to charitable beneficiaries. You can do it that way. That way you're sort of maintaining an income for yourself.
So I could do something like on taking out have a right to live in my house until I die, but take out, say, $50,000 a year from the principal of it, and then the charity like Breathe California would get it when I die?
The charity would get it when you die, of course, after the bank gets paid back, whatever that reverse mortgage amount was. Yes, definitely. So that's another possibility. And again, if you have trusts, there's all different kinds of trusts that you can set up for charitable giving. Charitable remainder trusts, where it sort of works like a charitable gift annuity. You put some dollars into this trust, you maintain payments out of it at specified, you know, amounts, typically 5% of whatever you put in it. You'd pay that out to yourself every year, and then whatever's left at the end of the term of the trust, that goes to the charity. The benefit to things like that, as also with charitable gift annuities, is you get an income tax deduction on the year that you put the asset into the trust or the gift annuity. So a lot of people are trying to do some income tax planning. It's really a helpful way to them to do some planning now and give some benefit to charity down the road.
So you got any other great ideas to help our audience and help a nonprofit like Breathe California simultaneously?
Well, other great ideas, again, I think a simple bequest is the simplest and best way, using your will, your trust. And if you have life insurance, those term life insurance policies are really great ways to benefit charities. And I would highly recommend that you consider that. And again, you can always change your mind and change it at any given time. And of course, another a big thing that I'm an advocate of for any charity that you feel strongly about is volunteering your time. That's something that you can give the charity benefit right now today, something you feel strongly about. And you know, frankly, that's gonna build a connection between the person volunteering their time and eventually wanting their legacy to pass on to that charity at some point in the future. And I think a lot of charities overlook their volunteers and asking them to be givers when they pass.
Well, and I would encourage any of you that want, since John gave me the shot at this, to come volunteer for Breathe California. We really appreciate it. We have hundreds of things to help on. There's a lot of ways to volunteer, and you cannot believe how good those volunteers are to us. Our funding sources are thousands of people that are giving us $5 checks 3 or 4 times a year, as opposed to big donors. You're absolutely right that you know, every couple of years we'll have a very large, when I say large, maybe $1 million donation by somebody in their will. But the cornerstone for us is all those people that we've helped with breathing difficulties contributing. So pretty significant. So I've got daughters 26 and 34. If they're watching this program, what do you want to tell them about writing a will? They think they're too young and don't need to sweat it.
Yeah, I would say that at the very least, if for example, they really had some modest bank accounts and brokerage accounts, they didn't own any real property, for example, I'd say, you know what, at least make sure to do that beneficiary designation on those accounts. That way, whoever you want that to go to, whether it's your siblings or your mom and dad, whoever it is, they're not going to have to go through either a full-blown probate process or even an abbreviated probate process just to get that money to go where you want it to go to. It's going to save a lot of headaches down the road, and frankly, you should keep in mind that whenever you open a new bank account, to just go ahead and do it at that time.
Yeah.
Open the new account and designate the beneficiary right then and there. That way you don't have to think about it later.
Yeah, and if you got any type of assets, I mean, I want to scare people about cars. 40,000 of us are dying a year in car accidents. It's a major risk in your life between 1 and say 65. So it's not common, but if you have any assets and you want them distributed correctly, you're better off getting, because you can do a real simple will.
Very simple will, and you know, a lot of times I'll have people ask me, yeah, I don't really need an attorney, I don't have that much, but I'd like to have a will. What can I do? And my suggestion would be a couple of things. You can go to any bookstore. Nolo Press has a great wills book that you can prepare your own will and do it the right way and have all the necessary provisions in it, and it'll be a perfectly acceptable and valid and binding will. You can go to some of these websites you see all over the place that basically sell you, sort of pre-formatted wills, trusts, and do the same similar type planning and really get it done for a fraction of the cost that it would, coming to an attorney and really putting a full plan together for you.
So John, we got about 30 seconds left. Just hit everybody between the eyes again. What would you like them to remember?
I'd like you really to remember that it's absolutely critical that you really sit down, take 10 or 15 minutes, plan your estate, think about what you want to happen, and then come up with some steps to make it happen. Whether it's a will or a trust, to call an attorney, whatever it is, put a plan together for yourself, some action items, and make it happen.
So John's name and contact information has been on the screen a number of times. If any of these issues hit you, give him a call. This is Breathe California TV. We'll see you again next week.